This has definitely been the hardest night of this entire crossing.
We were pretty close to calling a pan-pan last night.
There was a massive bang.
Our helm had completely died.
And as soon as I took the wheel, I knew that our steering cable had snapped. It was kind of action stations, it was kind of blind panic.
We had 40 knots of wind, we had waves crashing all the way into the cockpit.
That is the most scared I have ever been on our boat. Last time on Red Seas, we ripped our beloved spinnaker and had to say a fond farewell to the Kraken, who has sailed us so faithfully over thousands of miles. We unleashed our secret weapon and raised our Jenniker, who we've named Nessie.
Lost the Kraken. What's another sea monster? I mean, Nessie?
Nessie! Aww!
After a few trials getting it rigged correctly, we made a fatal error and broke our bowsprit for the third time, which left us dead in the water with no downwind sail plan for the rest of our crossing. We tried to make the most of being becalmed by jumping in to clean our hulls and trying to repair our engine.
We kind of alluded earlier to the fact that we'd had a little bit of engine failure.
But that just uncovered bigger problems that we'll need to address when we make landfall in French Polynesia. For now, we're just doing all we can to keep moving forward.
Good morning. So I just woke up and we have wind, which sounds worse than it really is. The wind has finally returned. It seems that we've overnight picked up speed a little bit. We're going just over 4 knots, but our wind apparent has gone from being like 10 to 15, 16. So we just had a bit of a back and forth, and I think we've decided to put the main up at last. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go for the whole rabbit versus hare situation. We're going to tear off further south than we'd want to go. But that means that we can put the wind at an angle to the boat where both sails will end up off our starboard side. We'll hare off south, and then when we need to, we can jibe, turn the boat around, put the wind on the other side of the boat, come back up again. How many times we're going to do that? I don't really know. That's going to be a judgment call based on, I don't know, how bored we get or what the wind does, I suppose.
I'm sure you're used to this routine by now. During the day, we get all excited, something good happens, and we start celebrating. It's all going wonderfully. This has definitely been the hardest night of this entire crossing. What are we, day 30, day 31 by now? And even compared to those lightning strikes that we had in week 3, I don't think I have been as scared as I was this evening.
So we were pretty close to calling a pan-pan last night. A pan-pan is like a radio call that you can shout out if you need like immediate assistance.
It got to around midnight. I was just about to finish my watch. Ian was just about to come on. And there was a massive bang.
Our helm had completely died.
I took auto helm off. I knew it came from the helm. And as soon as I took the wheel, I knew that our steering cable had snapped.
So we didn't manage to film a lot of it because there's quite a lot going on.
The boat just rounded up. Luckily, we had dropped the mainsail because that would have been terrifying. So we only had the Genoa out. So I just started reefing that as quickly as I could, left a little snippet of it to try and stabilize the boat, but we just went side onto the waves. The wind was blowing at like 35 knots, inching up to 40 occasionally. I just yelled and Ian jumped out of bed, and yeah, it was kind of action stations, it was kind of blind panic.
So it was basically like 3 hours that we were on emergency tiller control, which is, if you can think of it like old school sailboats, you have this bar that we connect directly to the rudder stalk, and then when we pull it one way or the other, we're physically turning the rudders back and forth. Yeah, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. I just went blank. Like,
okay, we're emergency tiller steering from the back step, but what next? Like, we don't have a spare steering cable just lying around that's exactly the right size. So yeah, we probably took like an hour of, or even longer probably, just trying a bunch of stuff. We knew that we didn't want to be out steering on the back step the whole night or the whole of the rest of this passage. We still have 800 nautical miles to go. And so we tried to like rig up some lines through blocks and round winches to come into the cockpit. We tried like tying them onto the helm wheel, thinking maybe if we like turn the wheel one way, it would kind of pull that line, but it wasn't really working. And so finally we just recognized that we had to build a steering cable. We needed to get control from the wheel. So, well, Ian steered for 3 hours on the back step in the dark, half a moon in the sky that then disappeared.
And while I was doing that, Brownie was running around frantically on deck trying to get things sorted out. And she ended up going all the way forward. She did an incredible job. She got up to the Jenniker that we have on deck, Nessie, and she managed to remove about 7 meters of Dyneema line, the bolt rope from that sail that was already all furled up.
I managed to put a loop in one end of the steering cable and just tie it together with zip ties. So then I could tie the Dyneema onto that loop and then passed it through underneath the shelves in the cabin here through to the engine bay. And then the most terrifying part was needing to climb into the engine bay to secure the other end of the line.
She then managed to tie that to one of the rudder stalks, and then she ran it all the way back through the starboard aft cabin, and she managed to attach it somehow to the frayed end of the original stainless steel steering cable.
I completely freaked out. We had a loose bolt from our dinghy davits, and I had to get in behind to just hold it in place while Ian did the bolt up from the front. And being in a small cramped space underway with the engine going, and trying to wiggle my way around a small space to reach a part that was kind of far away was absolutely terrifying. But Ian said I would not have been strong enough to manage the emergency tiller, so there was only one option. It had to be me. We lifted up the engine bay, I jumped in, Ian unclipped my harness and threw it in after me and just shut the lid and then got the emergency tiller back on so he could steer the boat while I was in there. And we just had like a little series of knocks on the door to be like, are you okay? Yes, I'm okay. I thought it was the port line that had snapped, which would have been quite difficult to manage because it's so much longer and it's going over to the other side of the boat.
So because of the way the helm works, when you turn the helm, you're kind of like pulling on 2 stainless steel wires, and one of those just chafed all the way through, and it's just a massive tangled mess down there.
Thankfully, it was the starboard line, and it had just, I don't know, it chafed through when it goes through this kind of pulley block thing. So I managed to get the Dyneema through the pulley and tie it on right at the end there to a little tiny shackle, which is not really up to the job, but it'll do for now.
So just that section that died has been replaced with the Dyneema, which isn't great because, you know, if it's gonna chafe, it'll chafe faster than stainless steel. But at least it's better than nothing. We did have some problems getting the tensioning right and everything sorted and balanced.
I almost cried the moment that I saw the 2 lines actually start moving again. So Ian was still controlling the steering from out here, but he could see the helm wheel start to move again. And so yeah, I came back out here and he stopped steering there and I took over at the helm. It's quite light and loose because I couldn't tie the line up as tightly as it needs to be. But the big news, well, firstly, it was just amazing that we could both get back into the cockpit. And secondly, we could put autopilot on and it is holding.
To be honest, that was just a massive blessing because it got to about 3 in the morning, I think, and we realized everything was probably going to work out okay and it was going to give us what we needed. And by then I was completely burnt out.
So we've got another 3 hours till sunrise. The moon has gone away, so it's completely pitch black now. Ian is physically and emotionally exhausted. He's just lying down, a little bit collapsed in the cockpit.
Yeah, controlling the rudder from the scoop for like 3 hours, it was such hard work. And, you know, as I said, we had 40 knots of wind, we had waves crashing all the way into the cockpit. It was just nuts, absolutely nuts.
So we have put a scrap of Genoa out, like 3 reefs or probably 4. We've turned the engine off. We have got only 25 knots of wind now, which is, you know, great. And we're making 4.5 to 5 knots downwind. I have no idea what our long-term plan is. I'm kind of just fixated on sunrise, to be honest, because when we can see what we're doing, it's less scary. I need to check the weather again. Last time I looked, we're going to have these high winds, high swell for another couple of days. So having cursed these light winds and no swell whatsoever, of course, as soon as they pick up, we're like, no, it's too much now. We're just never happy. Sorry, I'm talking really fast. I am high on adrenaline right now. I know that I will crash very soon. As I say, that is the most scared I have ever been on our boat. High winds, side onto swell, and just feeling like we had no control. I feel like every major system has now gone down. We've lost one engine, we've lost a spinnaker that tore into, our bowsprit fell off, so we can't use our Jenica. This engine has an oil leak in it, had problems with the autopilot, and now a steering cable has snapped.
This morning, when the sun comes up, of course, everything starts to look a bit easier. The waves have certainly not died down, but we have got the helm back, so we can still steer. We've got about another 800 nautical miles to go, I think, give or take. And depending how we can do that, how fast we can go, that's another week, pretty much. So we're not at the woods by any stretch, but it was a close call if we were going to be able to get something to work. And if we hadn't got anything working, I hate to say it, but we'd probably have had to call that pan and then waited to be picked up and abandon ship, which, that's crazy. Like, that is crazy for a wire, for a piece of steel cable. So we have some other ideas in the backup. We're thinking if this Dyneema does chafe through, then maybe we can steal one of these lifelines that run around the side of the boat. They're made of steel. They're thinner gauge, which isn't so good, but it might do the job. And maybe we can bodge something together with that. But so I say, neither of us got a lot of sleep last night. I'm telling you, it's like the Pacific doesn't want to let us go.
It's now 24 hours since we fixed the steering cable, and I think I'm just about coming down from the panic of the event. We spent most of yesterday just running short, kind of 3 or 4 hour shifts, trying to get as much rest as possible. The swell was still absolutely huge, so we had these huge rolling waves coming in from behind us, about the height of our hardtop, and then we would just sort of, it looked like they were going to crash over the entire back of the boat, and then at the last second the boat would just lift up over it. We had one that came in and felt like it filled the cockpit. I couldn't help but scream out loud as it landed and woke Ian up, who was having a sleep. And after that I just stayed inside and watched. I couldn't take my eyes off the waves, but I was terrified of them, so I just kind of watched through the door, and as I saw the consistency of them, and as I got used to the movement, and hour by hour the day went past, and so I could sort of gradually start trusting in the movement of the boat again. But I'm definitely still feeling kind of shaky, and I'm just so nervous about anything else breaking on this boat. I never ever want to feel how I felt yesterday. It was just terrifying.
Well, this morning we have a bit of a washing machine. So last night we had a big squall that was building up further south than us. We knew that would kind of mess with our wind, so most of the night we had sort of 30 plus knots coming through, and we were reefing up Genoa. We're flying just the Genoa now. What has unfortunately happened is that squall further south has kicked up a whole pile of swell and surge that's being forced north towards us, and all of the waves that were already working from behind, pushing us west with the dominant wind, are also still here. So they're now kind of converging and creating this washing machine effect on board, which is really nice. The good news is we are counting down the degrees now. So rather than thinking in miles, because miles are getting shorter by the day, which is great. Big wave. We realized the other day that when we were doing our paper-based charts, we have about, well, I think we have 9 degrees of longitude left to go, which sounds crazy, but we can literally count down from 10. So yesterday it was 10, today it's 9, and then hopefully by the end of my shift it'll be 8. And if we can do 1 to 2 degrees longitude per 24 hours, then this is us in the home stretch. It's been a bit of a mission. I mean, we're actually quite enjoying ourselves, to be honest. When everything's been in one piece and working, you have to appreciate where you are. You're not going to be here in this exact spot, maybe ever again. And that is pretty special. But it takes it out of you, I'll tell you that much.
Definitely starting to feel a little bit calmer now. It's the second day after our steering cable snapped, and I've been working through the fear and the kind of the recovery of the trauma of being in that situation. So all of last night I was just talking myself down, and the longer that we're in these conditions, I'm just reminding myself that we can do this. We are doing this. The boat is working well, it is safe just now, and we're kind of getting back into that sailing mindset. So we're checking the steering cable twice a day minimum, and as long as that holds up, then actually that doesn't need to be an issue that concerns us anymore. Thankfully, the autopilot is holding up really well, because that had kind of given up a few days ago. We were hand steering for a while, but Ian got a bit annoyed and hit it with a hammer and seems happy now. So fingers crossed that holds together, because that is making a huge difference. We're just trying to rest as much as possible. I still have absolutely no appetite. I'm forcing myself to eat meals because I know that I need them. I'm trying to sleep as much as possible. My muscles are still feeling kind of shaky today. I'm not as anxious as I was yesterday, but my body still hasn't quite recovered. So we're just being really kind to ourselves, and I think once the swell calms down, which it should tonight, then hopefully we can enjoy the next few days. But the end is definitely in sight. So every couple of hours, whenever we have a spare moment, we're just taking a look underneath the nav station where our autopilot is, and just making sure that everything is happy under there, that the chains are still connected, that the cables are not too loose. There's definitely a bit of play in there. It's looser than it needs to be, but it doesn't matter for now. It will get us there. That's not a problem. I would rather it was a little bit too loose than too tight and causing extra pressure on the system. And then we come down into this cabin and check the repair that we did the other night. So it used to be called the workshop. It has since been renamed to the cabin of bad ideas, and you're going to see why. So we had to pull everything off the shelves so that we could get access to the space under here where the steering cables run. I'm going to pretend that that's the only reason why it's a mess in here. Then we can just climb up into this little space and take a look. So we can see this is the original steering cable that has sheared. These are the U-bolts that I put on in the emergency, and it just comes around a thimble here. There is already some damage to the cable, but we're just keeping an eye on it. And then this is where it ties off to the Dyneema and goes right through there into the engine bay. So we're making sure that the Dyneema isn't chafing. It doesn't actually sit on that space at the back. When it's moving, it is lifted up. So we're keeping an eye on that. And so far, all seems well. I've marked with a Sharpie where the points of the cable are together at the point of the thimble and where the U-bolts are, so that we can monitor if it slips at all. But so far, it seems to be holding well, which is amazing. And then every morning, I'm also jumping into the engine bay to check that everything down there is okay. So I can just see that the Dyneema comes around that turning block and then runs back into the cabin where I was just looking. So I'm just making sure that that's not chafing, making sure that the knot isn't slipping, checking the other cable while I'm there to make sure that that one is okay. And yeah, it's a tight space, but I can just about fit in it. I've worked out the method now. And then I just give a little knock on the roof, and Ian opens the hatch and I can jump out again. So yeah, it is it's an extra level of checks that we're doing, but every time we look, it has been absolutely fine. So that's giving us confidence that it's going to hold up the rest of the way.
We've been through so much on this crossing, and if you want to read more about how we've overcome all these challenges, our patrons have been enjoying daily updates from our journal, which includes everything we couldn't fit in these episodes. Sign up at patreon.com/Red Sea.
We're going faster than we were.
And we're going closer to the wind, to the west than we were.
Yeah.
I think that worked.
All right, let's do this all the way. Can I go to bed now?